I know that climate change is something that affects our whole planet, worse in these times.
The heat, in terms of like when we have the smoke and then the smoke go up in the air and then it contaminate it and then everybody, it probably create maybe a virus or something and it make we sneeze up, allergies, reactions and stuff like that.
I don't know anything about climate change.
I know that climate change is a real issue that we're facing as a entire human race, and that it's real, it's scientifically proven, and I have no doubts about it.
Everyday conversations show that an understanding of climate change varies from person to person. Generally, people tend to shy away from technical information, and sometimes that results in a lack of a deeper understanding. When it comes to climate change, many of our citizens are not aware of the clear and present dangers that it has created for little Belize. It is not until floodwaters climb to our rooftops because of devastating floods, or when the cost of lime triples due to drought-related scarcity, or when a hunter is forced to go deeper and deeper into the forests while still coming out with less game, that we come to terms with the impacts of climate change.
Last year when the flood came, the water was higher than me. It almost reached on the second flooring of the house, and my dad and farm got flooded too. We lost everything. We were left with nothing.
I felt helpless. Months and months of hard work. Flood came by, destroy everything. I don't know what to do. And even before floods affected our plantation, things in the forest have not been so easy for us. Hunting is getting harder and harder. When people go clear lands and trees, the animals go farther and farther into the forest. For us, that means hunting is not that easy as we used to. We have to go miles and miles into the forest and still come with less or no animal for our family. So now, I don't know what we will do.
While local farmers must find creative ways to survive in the face of climate change, large industries have also had to become innovative to stay in business. Belize's sugar industry is one of the country's largest income earners, with an annual average income of over $100 million. While thousands are directly employed in the industry, hundreds of thousands indirectly depend on the industry for foreign exchange and other economic activity. But sugar is not exempt from the impacts of climate change. In fact, it has been one of Belize's main victims to this phenomenon. Olivia Aviles, cane farmer relations manager from the Belize Sugar Industries Limited, shared how.
Here in the north, 90%, well, actually almost 100% of the cane that is grown is rain-fed. So water is a key element. Sunshine and temperatures are key elements to keep a natural ecosystem in check, meaning pests. So if we don't have enough water, it stresses the cane a lot, so it impacts the production of that sugar cane. If we have too much rain, it also impacts that sugar cane.
Continued climate change-related disaster could literally mean the end of the industry.
We have to accept the changing environment because it is what it is, and we have to adapt to what is changing. For the sugar industry, if we were to sit back and do nothing, our losses could be 100%. For agriculture, especially for sugarcane, we are very dependent on the climate conditions. And for us, if we don't respond, it's a huge risk to our business.
And while agro-producers face off existential climate concerns, even the small subsistence farmers are being forced to adapt.
Right now, this is our little farm that we do sustainable farming.
Well, many years ago, you used to could safely say that you would cut your plantation farmers, and at the end of May, you would burn your slash and burn and ready for when the rain come. But now, the rain pattern is so much different. Some nights you hear the thunder and it just pours, and tomorrow it get bright, and you cannot really track it again. Drought is terrible.
Drought, pest control, topsoil runoff, and other issues have been major headaches for big and small farmers alike. None of them, though, have doubts about what are some of the harmful activities that have been contributing to the climate crisis.
I am very concerned, when I see all these trees being removed from places where probably was water catchment. And when the trees are being removed, the water will be more severe and rush down and cover places that were never flooded before. I am so concerned that sometimes I boil, and if you're close to me, you can see the steam coming out of me because people are not looking at the future. You're just thinking about today's gratification.
Often, we don't connect the dots and think of the impact that natural disasters have on all sectors. Droughts and floods mean less foreign exchange earnings. In recent years alone, Belize's economy has been devastated as a result of weather crisis. Drought has caused an estimated 50 million in agricultural losses in 2019 alone. 816 small farmers had major losses. Almost 15,000 acres of yellow corn were damaged, and in 2020, roughly 60,000 residents were directly affected by record floods. These issues have resulted in unemployment, desperation, and more non-performing loans, all combining into one big nightmare for the economy. It's not all doom and gloom, though. The power to slow down climate change is in our hands, and there are many grassroots efforts to effect change. One such group is the Community Baboon Sanctuary, CBS, cradled in the heart of rural Belize district.
Ecotourism is very important for the people living within the Community Baboon Sanctuary because that's one of the main way that the landowners or members of the sanctuary make some or derive some benefits from being a part of the sanctuary. And that also helps in conservation of the resources that we have within the area because people do realize that they stand to make more or can make more in the longer term. At first, it wasn't hard to convince people to buy into the idea. If I go back in 1985 when the sanctuary first got started, it was pretty easy to get people to sign on to the idea because, like I said, into the conservation component of the baboon sanctuary. But what we are seeing now, it's harder now to convince people because we have a lot of people coming in from outside the area. For example, foreigners coming up and buying different parcels of land. And when they come into the area, they already have a mindset of what they want to do.
Here at the Community Baboon Sanctuary, we are so coexist with nature.
Mr. Robert Panting, a tour guide at the sanctuary, has made a living showcasing the area to local and foreign visitors. His love and care for the environment has been reciprocated by the stars of the sanctuary, the black howler monkeys, who recognize his voice and willingly come close to him to play, much to the fascination of visitors. Robert, his colleagues, and the residents of the area know how important it is to conserve and protect the environment that provides for them. But, as in the case with small countries that are responsible environmentally, residents in the sanctuary are not immune from the effects of climate change and the many bad practices of outsiders.
Yeah, so over the years, the flooding has gotten worse in certain parts of the river valley because not everyone is prone to flooding, but the farms that they do have would be prone to flooding. And what we are noticing, if you go on the river from year to year like we do or so often, you can see where you're losing X amount of land every year due to petty erosion. And then On the flip side of that, drought has significantly affected the area because now people used to be able to predict when it's going to rain, when to start preparing the ground, when to put seeds in the ground, but now because the pattern has changed significantly, it's hard to actually predict when to do that. And then also the drought has led to quite a number of forest fires within the area as well. So that again has its own impact because again, some of the animals' habitat is burnt out. So when the flood does come, it causes a lot of runoff quickly because there's nothing there to hold the soil. So if you have drought, forest fire, then all of a sudden you have a heavy downpour of rain which causes flooding, it washes away all that topsoil. So that comes right back into you getting a poor yield for agriculture.
Poor land management, selfish environmental degradation, and unsustainable development have all been depleting our planet's lungs, or forests. If we continue as we have been, our future generations will have insufficient natural resources for their own survival, and the planet itself may reach the breaking point any second now. Thankfully, through the help of driven, dedicated institutions and passionate people, there is a glimmer of hope.
REDD Plus itself, it has 3 phases, right? The readiness phase, implementation, and eventual results-based payment. Right? The idea or the objective behind this first phase is to ensure that we manage to get all the proper, what I consider, documentations in place, mechanisms in place, in order to move to the next stage, which is actual on-the-ground implementation of activities, programs, initiatives that can build a level of resiliency within the ecosystem, especially the forest ecosystem.
The REDD Plus project undertakes to foster greater collaboration between government agencies, the private sector, and individual stakeholders, with a goal to achieve better decision-making, where the usage and extraction of resources from Belize's forests are concerned. Already, stakeholders are embracing better practices.
More farmers are taking into consideration the need not to remove all the trees from their pastures, right? Gone are the days whereby you just clear cut everything, especially with the onset of climate change right now, these drought situations. You go to a field, you go to a pasture, all these herds are flocked under one tree. So they're realizing the need now not to clear cut, and of course practicing these silvopastoral systems in order to maintain that plant stand or that forested stand. So that is one example I'd say is a step in the right direction when it comes to maintaining that balance between development and production.
Dr. Gladden emphasized his belief that there are many practical things that all of us can do, from government to individuals, to contribute to the fight against climate change.
It comes back down to personal ownership, right? You take care of the environment the way in which you take care of your household. You try your best not to ever overexploit anything. Be sustainable in the practices that you do. And that should resonate in the institutions or the organizations that you work for. We've, in certain form or fashion, have been trying to combat the effects as it relates to being in a changing climate. This, of course, we factor not only the environmental component of it, but the social component of it as well. And I would always support, these sort of activities whereby we share lessons learned, not necessarily looking at some of the lessons learned outside, but within locally, right? And build our own capacity. Human capital is something essential for nation building. If we negate the need for that, we're always going to be a step behind when it comes to combating some of these impacts, combating some of these effects.
As global citizens, we depend on the environment to provide for us food, lumber, raw materials to produce clothing, fuel, and even furniture. The environment sustains us, but we're only renting it and must do so responsibly. Our actions will impact our children, their children, and the generations to come. If we want our children to be able to enjoy lush forests, exotic wildlife, fresh meat, and most importantly, clean air thanks to our carbon sinks, we must conserve, protect, and respect our environment. There can be no other way.